All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Jessica Law. I'm the Executive Director at the Sacramento Water Forum, and we're just thrilled to have you here tonight to talk about the upcoming project that we have starting this summer on the Lower American River. This project you're going to learn a lot about this project tonight, and we're hoping that we learn a little bit about you and what your interests are. We know there's a lot of folks that are from the neighborhood and the community that might be here tonight, and we're, really happy to have you here. There's a few things that we want to go over on, as we go through the slides. Please go ahead and hold your questions until the end. You can add them in the chat, in the Q&A as we go if you do have questions, and then we'll come to them at the end. Yep, so go ahead and feel free to submit those questions as we go using that Q&A button. So you'll hear from me tonight, and then you'll also hear from Erica Bishop, who is our program manager that manages the Habitat projects during the summer and is just a wealth of knowledge about all the aspects of the project. So she's going to be talking as well. All right, should we go on to the next slide? Yeah. So just a few practical items about tonight. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available later if you would like to review it, or if you want to send it around to anyone. A live transcript is also available if you would like to read the captioning as we go. Just click on that live transcript button on your screen. I believe it's at the bottom. And then, as we go ahead and submit questions. We are really curious to hear from you and what your questions are, and we'll do our best to answer all of them. Let's see, go ahead, next slide. One shout out, I just want to say, we're going to talk about the Water Forum and our partners. I would like to thank Supervisor Desmond for helping us get the word out about this information session. Big shout out and thanks to Supervisor Desmond, and hopefully if there's additional questions, we'll talk more about how to get in touch with us at the Water Forum if there's questions as we go, but he is always a resource. Okay, so we are here to talk about our exciting habitat projects. The Water Forum has been doing habitat enhancement projects on the Lower American River for about 12 years now. It's a main aspect of our work. It really, we have staff and resources to do it. So we're going to talk a little bit about why we do that, why these projects are important, where the funding comes from, and who our partners are, and what we hope to achieve out of these projects. We'll also talk a little bit about the specific project that's happening this summer at Upper Riverbend. And then we're going to talk about, public engagement, stakeholder outreach. That means all of you, sort of questions that you might have and ways to get in touch with us. And then, of course, answer your questions. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Okay, so a little about the Water Forum. As I said, I'm the Executive Director at the Water Forum. I've been at the Water Forum for about 2.5 years, but the Water Forum has been around for 20 plus years. It is a coalition of business, water, environmental, and public groups that came together over 20 years, almost 30 years ago, to help resolve conflicts on the Lower American River. And that can be anything from working with state and federal agencies to ensure that they're managing the flows and the operations on the river to the best of our ability, to doing habitat enhancement projects, to really ensuring that we're achieving our co-equal objectives, as you see up here. So the Water Forum, we have 2 primary objectives, or co-equal objectives. That's to provide a reliable and safe water supply for the region's economic health and growth and development through the year 2030. And then to preserve the fishery, wildlife, and aesthetics of the recreation and aesthetics of the Lower American River. That year 2030 is the original agreement date. The agreement was signed in 2000, and they envisioned that it was going to go out into the year 2030. The Water Forum has been very successful in the work that we've been doing, and the members of the Water Forum have decided that they want to continue the agreement, and so we're actively working on renegotiating that agreement right now. Okay, go ahead, next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about our project partners. The Water Forum itself is a collaborative organization. We have a lot of members that represent these different interests from across the region, but we also work with project partners to make sure that we're implementing these projects. So Bureau of Reclamation is the federal agency that manages and operates Folsom Reservoir, Folsom Dam, and Nimbus Dam. California Natural Resources Agency, which is the state level resources agency that oversees state departments related to natural resources management, and they're assisting with funding on this project. Sacramento County Regional Parks is a main partner, as they are the landowner and land manager on the parkway. California Department of Fish and Wildlife and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are both resource agencies that we work with on permitting. SAFCA, Sacramento Area Flood Control District, is another important partner, as they work a lot on the Lower American River and the Parkway to ensure flood safety or safety from floods. And then, of course, City of Sacramento and Sacramento County, they are members of the Water Forum, but they are primary partners in all the work that we do, and we are a joint city-county office. Go ahead, next slide. This work is incredibly complex work. It takes a team, and part of that team involves funding. So we do receive funding for these projects from a few sources. The main source, or the longest standing source, is from the Water Forum itself. Our funding comes from local water purveyors. So if you get your water bill, your local water district, they are likely a part of the Water Forum. And that also includes City of Sacramento, Sacramento County. They jointly fund the habitat work that we do, and that really allows us to leverage existing funding with some additional sources of funding from state and federal agencies. So the Bureau of Reclamation, I've mentioned them as well. They had legislation passed in the 90s that's really supported this work and improvement along the Lower American River, and then rivers really throughout the Central Valley. So we're one part of that program, and they've been a longstanding partner implementing these habitat enhancement projects. And then Prop 68, voter approved in California, I believe in 2018, that is a measure that taxpayers decided that we want to continue to invest in healthy watersheds. And this bond measure has supported this project and project in past years, and will be continuing to support the habitat projects for the next few years. Okay, next. So let's get into why we're doing this. The Lower American River is a beautiful place. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Hopefully you spend some time out there on the weekends or during the week playing. And for those of you who are familiar with it, you know that it's a major part of what we sometimes refer to as the salmon highway. So it's a part of the route that salmonid species use in Northern California as they migrate from the ocean back into fresh water and then back out again. There are two species of concern that we track very carefully, amongst others, but we'll talk a bit about these tonight. So we're going to talk about steelhead trout and fall run Chinook salmon. They use the Lower American River throughout the year, but mainly for spawning and for rearing. So anadromous salmonids have been using the river for as long as, way past our records, but the rivers are really their natal streams. And so the salmon are programmed, they're wired to return to these streams every single year. And in order to do that, they really need to have the correct temperatures, the correct water quality conditions in order to thrive and survive. Go ahead, next slide. Their habitat has changed a lot with, over the last 150 years. We've, when Californians arrived in, or what are to be Californians in sort of the 1849 gold rush era, there's a lot of changes that happened on the landscape, massive landscape scale changes that has dramatically reduced the habitat available. So both those landscape changes, impacts from hydraulic mining, and then also when dams and other flood and water infrastructure have also dramatically impacted salmon habitat by blocking passage to the upper watershed. So this map's pretty cool. It looks a little like a spaghetti diagram, but if you look at it, all those black lines, that used to be the extent and the habitat area for all the salmonids as they would move up the tributaries into the foothills and the mountains. And with dams, with the rim dams, that habitat area has been cut off. And with the decrease in habitat area, it's really impacted the fish's ability to reproduce and to be productive and really to thrive and survive. Dams alter the hydrology, they block sediment transport. There's a whole other host of impacts associated with dams, including reducing that spawning and rearing habitat extent, function, and quality. Of course, these dams also provide extensive flood management and flood protection, and is a part, they are a part of our modern landscape. Okay, go ahead. Next slide. So when we think about where the fish have opportunities to spawn and rear now, this is this map shows sort of the historical and the current habitat extent in the American River region. And so all of that red is no longer accessible for salmonids, and instead they really have space just from Nimbus Dam and below. So that's where we focus our work to make sure that salmon have opportunities to spawn and rear as much as possible. Okay, that's the story of salmon. I am going to turn it over to Erica Bishop, program manager at the Water Forum, to talk a little bit more about the habitat program and especially the projects that we've got coming up this year. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you, Jessica. So tacking on to the overview that Jessica gave us, Jessica took us down through, showed us the watershed and really what our habitat extent is for our salmonids in the river and in our American River watershed now. And that is where the Water Forum comes in. Her previous slide, she mentioned how our salmonids used to be able to access almost 200 miles of main stem and tributary habitat that would have, that did exist upstream of Nimbus Dam. However, since that is no longer accessible to our salmonids, that's where the Water Forum comes in with our habitat enhancement program. Many of you probably are familiar with some of the work we've done in the past, and our projects are focused in that lower portion of the river below Nimbus Dam, where our salmon and steelhead still have access to the river and can come in and complete their life cycle. The projects that you see here are we have 10 sites, actually. This is part of a larger program and a larger plan for the river. These sites run from Nimbus Dam down to Riverbend Park. And the sites where we have worked in the past and may work in the future, including this year, include areas where we know our salmonids have used these habitats in the past. They're known spawning areas, or they're areas where, with a little tweak and some enhancement, the habitat would become more suitable for salmonids. These areas are located or concentrated in this upper half of the lower American River because that is where we have the coolest temperatures and where the hydraulic conditions are the most suitable for our salmon to come in and spawn. They are driven by instinct, as Jessica mentioned, to come in and go as far upriver as they can. So our program since 2008 has enhanced or created dozens of acres of spawning habitat for the fish that are coming back in to complete their life cycle as adults. And in more recent years, we have expanded into providing side channel and seasonally inundated rearing habitat. And I want to thank all of our parkway stakeholders for your patience as we did work last year. Last year was the biggest year we've ever had on the river so far. And we implemented more habitat in a single year than ever before. We know it was a lot of work occurring on the parkway, and we do thank you for that. There we go. All right, before we talk about what you can expect at Upper River Bend this year, I'd like to share a little bit about some of the results we've seen just upstream. As I mentioned, our salmon and steelhead, they are driven by instinct to go as far upriver as they can. However, we know that every salmon and steelhead in the river, there isn't room for them to go and spawn in Nimbus Basin or at Sailor Bar. So we part of our program goals are to enhance habitats farther downriver so that the fish are more able to spread out and have a better chance of success if they have better conditions farther downstream to have effective habitat to come in and spawn. This should help the population. So in 2021, we took a chance and we worked much farther downriver than usual at Ancil Hoffman Park, just adjacent out from the nature study area. And it paid off. We were very excited, especially in, this project in 2021 was during a severe drought year. We all know how low the river was that year. And we have crews, contract crews that are out on the river assessing the habitat and looking at what's going on in the river and how the fish use it every year. And the year before we worked at Ancil Hoffman, we saw very few reds, Chinook reds at the Ancil Hoffman site, and we didn't see any steelhead reds at all. And the year after the project, for our Chinook, it's just a few months. It's almost as we're backing the equipment out of the river, the fish are really coming in. And we saw that bump up from, the 1 to 3% of total reds on the Lower American to 14%. And I guess I should mention that for those of you who are not familiar with the salmonid life cycle, the reds are the nests that our female adult salmon and steelhead build in the gravel to lay their eggs so that they may incubate over time in that cold water that's flowing. So we go out every year and count all of the reds that are occurring in the river, either on foot or via aerial photography, so that we have a very good snapshot of what the fish activity looks like in the river each year. So, from year one after the project and year two, those are all of the blue and red dots that you see over to the right on that first photo. You can see that the fish really, really liked Ancil Hoffman. So that tells us that it's a good idea to come back down to this part of the river and try and work again. And our Chinook salmon are the most abundant run in the river. We do have our steelhead trout. There are not nearly as many of them on the Lower American, but they also really enjoyed Ancil Hoffman. We didn't have any steelhead spawning in this area at all the year before the project. And the next year, although there may not seem like there are very many dots on that steelhead photo, when we only have about 100 reds for steelhead in the river each year, having 30% of them at a single site is a really big deal. So that was very exciting. It was very gratifying. And we know that part of the reason why our steelhead liked this area so much is that we actually tweak our gravel size to serve our Chinook and our steelhead ever so slightly differently. And at this particular project site, we made that gravel a little bit smaller, and that works better for the steelhead, who are a slightly smaller species than the Chinook. And we had fantastic results. Also, the Water Forum is focused on improving fishery conditions, but as Jessica mentioned, our co-equal goals include aesthetics, recreation, wildlife, and we want to be a good neighbor on the parkway and do what we can for other resources. So before I get into the next project site, we know that there's a lot of disruption when these projects are implemented, especially with the growing rearing component, which means there's more grading that occurs on the site than would have in the past. It's moved beyond just putting gravel in the river. So I wanted to share some photos here that illustrate what you might expect immediately post-project, a few months after, and then about a year to year and a half later. The first photos on your left were taken by myself looking at the rearing alcove at the 2021 Ancil Hoffman site, where we did a tremendous amount of grading and excavation. And you can see there immediately after construction, it doesn't look very pretty. You see a lot of bare cobble and you see bare dirt, and you think, what is this going to do for fish? This is not what it looked like before. And just a few months later, after we come in with at that particular site, we did have a very robust volunteer and staff group that came out and helped us implement our willow plantings. We came out immediately after the project and we seeded this area with native grasses and wildflowers. And then later in the winter, we came out and we did our willow planting in the alcove. And you can see just a few months later, the willows are starting to sprout, even during that, it was horribly dry that season. And that was really gratifying. And the willows are reaching down and getting to that groundwater. and really starting to sprout and grow. And this past May, which is about 18 months post-project, you can really see this area almost exactly the same, a photo taken from almost exactly the same spot, really starting to fill in with the native grasses. You see a lot less bare cobble, not nearly as much bare dirt. Our mugwort, our grindelia are starting to come in, and this is how the site evolved. We do immediate restoration for spawning habitat, and the rearing habitat can take some time for these processes to really for nature to do its thing. And it's exciting to see how the site evolves on its own. We also had during the 2021 project we had actually some on-site disposal of fine material that wasn't the right size to put in the river for gravel. And even during that dry spring, you can see where the area that we seeded, it did start to fill in. Our poppies did well. They always seem to do well. And our lupins and others are starting to fill in a little bit, but not too much activity. And then out in May this year, there was a super bloom in Ancil Hoffman. I hope that everyone had a chance to see it. The lupins, our yarrow, everything was just exploding, and it really, you can't even tell that any work was done there at this point. So this is what we're going for. This is what you can expect as the site evolves over time. The immediate change can be quite different with the graded site, but once the vegetation starts to take hold and our natives take over, it really starts to look good. And all of this vegetation, especially our willows as it grows in, that helps to provide cover for our juvenile fish in the rearing area, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. So now that you've seen a little bit about the past project, the nuts and bolts of Upper River Bend Phase 1. The Phase 1 piece, I want to call that out. Phase 2 this is a very large site, the Upper River Bend site. Phase 2 is downstream of this. As of now, there are no plans. We do not have a schedule for the Phase 2 portion of the area. So it's really just this upstream part. The site is located immediately adjacent from the Ancil Hoffman Golf Course. And you can see here much of the work will take place near hole 16 and behind the driving range. Similar to past projects, we will be implementing spawning and rearing habitat at the site. And I have some photos here I'd like to use to illustrate what you can expect during construction and how the site how the construction sequencing will go. So what will happen once we get started, I'll talk more about schedule later, is that our crews will bring in the large equipment that they need via the park road. So that's Tarshish Drive and through Ancil Hoffman Park. They will use the asphalt trail that is currently used mostly for golf carts and foot traffic right now to access the site. And they'll stage equipment there that will stay out there until the project is finished. They will begin, just as at the previous project site, there's a large gravel bar here that's perched very high above the river. It's quite channelized here, so the river doesn't access and it doesn't inundate that area very often. So we see that as an opportunity to help restore some process through this restoration project. The crews will come out and start excavating the areas that you see here in yellow and orange. And the material that they pull out of those areas will go directly into a massive sorting machine. It's called a power screen, and that's illustrated up here in this photo to the right. And this machine is a giant motorized rock sieve, and what it does is take material that our crews excavate out, and it sorts it into gravel, cobble, and fine material. So once we get a good pile of that gravel and cobble built up, then the crews will use river-friendly equipment, like what you see here in this photo, large dump trucks, loaders, and excavators that has had its fluids and hydraulic fluid and greases replaced with a biofluid. It's basically like a vegetable oil, so it's safe to have in the river. They will use this river-friendly equipment to start placing this gravel in the river in the area that you see here marked in blue. And the way that they do that is they start from the edge and they work out behind a large berm. And in this photo to the right, you can see how clear the river is on the outside of the berm and how it looks like chocolate milk on the inside. And the berm is, not only do we wash and shake the gravel, but placing it behind this berm is one way that we help protect water quality during construction. And the first, many loads of gravel are used to construct a large semicircle around the edge of the project, working out from the bank. And so then the crews can do all of their work and place all of the rest of the gravel and pile it up behind that berm, waiting until the very end of the project where they will use a bulldozer that is also river friendly to push it all the way across, and also cut the boat notch that we have here. A boat notch is now designed into all of Waterform's projects at the request of our recreational community and regional parks. This is so that even at the lowest flows, low drought flows, ranger boats can always make it upstream to help anyone out that they need to, and that our recreational boaters always have at least one area where they won't bottom out. So that is that material is what we put in the river to create the spawning habitat for our adult fish to come in and use when they complete their life cycle. This is the material that they will use to, our female fish use their tails to create a vacuum and swish the gravel around. They like the clean, fluffy gravel, and it works really well for them to build their redds and lay their eggs. So after our crews, actually while they're doing that work, they will continue excavation of these orange areas. And these areas where we've taken material out to use in the river for spawning gravel do double duty. These are borrow site areas, and they also become our rearing habitat. So as those adult fish come in and lay their eggs in the spawning gravel, the eggs incubate for several months. Eventually, those fish hatch, and they need areas along the side channel areas and seasonally inundated floodplain areas along the channel margins where the water doesn't move as quickly, where it's a little warmer, where we have things like willows and woody habitat for them to find cover and food, hide from predators, and really have a chance to rest and live and grow as large as they can before they're ready to migrate out in the spring and early summer. So in these rearing areas, once we have all of the grading completed, we will go through just as previous projects and seed these areas with our native seed mix, and also place a lot of woody habitat. The woody habitat is actually driven into the bank with an excavator and covered up, and all of the nooks and crannies that are created by that habitat, which are repurposed orchard trees. Normally, orchard trees are ripped out and they get chipped and disposed of. So we have found orchards where trees are going to be removed, and we're going to be able to bring those directly to the project site, and they will live on as habitat for our fish. The crowns and the root balls of whole trees are fantastic habitat for our juvenile fish. All of the little nooks and crannies that exist in that woody material are where they like to hide and find food. So anytime you're talking about fish, wood is good. And there has been, over time, there was a policy of removing wood from rivers due to, flood concerns and public safety. So we were very excited more recently to be allowed to incorporate wood into the projects. And for public safety needs, that wood is only concentrated in the side channel areas. It is not in the main channel. And once we get our wood placed, at the very, very end of the project, we will come in and plant almost 4 acres of willow cuttings. So there should be a good amount of cover getting started for our fish. And we will expect some natural recruitment of willows and other vegetation over time. What we do with the plantings is really just give Mother Nature a boost of a season or two so that there's something there to start. And once we're finished with the project, we will fix the sod in the area where we've needed to cross the grassy areas and make any trail repairs to that asphalt trail as needed. And we will have some excess material off haul this year for the project. So I will talk a little bit more about what that means and what that haul route is here in a moment. All right. And not to get too in the weeds on design drawings, but I always like to include these because it illustrates really how we build the projects and how we design them. These projects are part of an adaptive management approach. There's a tremendous amount of modeling and iterative design that occurs so that we can get looking site by site and learning what we can from past projects, what worked, what could work better. And they are designed just like any other engineering project that you would see. And what we're going for here on our spawning riffle, you can see here the boat notch, it's designed in, and you can see where we place our cobble downstream so that the riffle stays in place for longer. And then we place our gravel upstream, and that is the material that the fish will use, that they're going to target. It's really what they're looking for when they come in to spawn. And our habitat is effective at a range of flows because we know a lot can change in the Lower American over the season. And but what we do is go for an average. On average, once completed, you can't see our spawning riffle. That's the great thing about spawning habitat is if you do it right, you can't even tell that it's there. It just looks like the river. Because when we're finished, we have about 2 feet a depth of water over the riffle, and the water moves about 2 feet per second. And those are a rule of thumb and very important. You want to have a good depth of water so that you don't ever have reds dry out when those eggs are sitting there. Our eggs they're an immobile life stage for our fish. So once the eggs are in gravel, we need to do what we can to make sure that the habitat is effective for them. So we want to have a good depth of water over the riffle once we're finished, and we want our water moving over the gravel and through it. So the way that the gravel is placed means that we have subsurface flow. And that's very important for the eggs while they're incubating, because just like any other living being, eggs as they're incubating before they hatch have metabolic waste that need to be washed away. And they also need that cold, oxygenated water coming in and flowing over the eggs so that they have the best chance of success. So we design the project so that those conditions are really optimized during the incubation time period. And you have some photos here. These are more photos that really just illustrate the berm and how we place the spawning gravel and really the magnitude of it. And these are actually the two on the left are both from Ancil Hoffman. We had a very long riffle at that project, and it was exciting to see it go in. The one on the right is from Upper Sailor Bar in 2019. And the other aspect of our habitat is the rearing habitat. As I mentioned, when those eggs, they've incubated for their several months and they are ready to hatch and fry and go over and try to find food, start eating on their own. They have absorbed their yolk sacs and they're looking for areas like our side channel and our seasonally inundated habitat. This project is exciting because we have both types of rearing habitat. We have a side channel that will never go dry, even at the lowest flows that are allowed in the river, which is about 500 CFS. And that is, we actually were at those low flows in 2021. So we design our habitat so that it doesn't go dry, even in the worst case scenario. And then it's surrounded by these areas that you see in green. And this is seasonally inundated habitat, which means that over the year's time, the depth of the water in these areas ebbs and flows with the season. And it inundates the woody habitat that we place. It inundates areas, that are covered in grasses and other plants and the willows, and really provides a great spot for our juvenile fish to hide. And you can kind of see that illustrated in this photo here, the fish under the water, taking advantage of that habitat. And just a few photos here. This is our willows after they start sprouting. And these are our crews last year actually placing our woody habitat in the side channel and Lower Sailor Barn. And in the photo on the right, you can see how, also during construction of our rearing habitat, we protect water quality by leaving a huge block of material at the upstream and downstream ends. We do all of the work in that muddy water so that it's isolated from the main channel, so that we don't have any water quality impacts. And that is not opened up until the end, until we're finished with all of that disturbance. And you can see that in the photo on the lower right. And that was at Upper Sailor Bar in 2019. So what can you expect as a Parkway visitor? This is a big project and it's going to take a couple of months to construct. We are expecting to start August 14th and to go for about 8 weeks. We will have, you can expect construction noise from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. We will have crews on site starting at 6 a.m. but they would be doing quiet activities such as equipment maintenance and, safety talks and that sort of thing during that first hour. And the no noise is really, that's something we want to hear from the public. If you do hear noises outside of these areas, outside of these hours, because we do try to instruct the crews and ask them to be very careful to not have backup beepers and be using air tools and things during those quiet hours. We will have some haul traffic that is new, but it really isn't that much over the length of the project. So it would be about 1 to 3 truck trips per hour of fairly small dump trucks for around 25 days. That would not occur on Sundays at all. It would be concentrated on Monday through Saturday. And for all of our past projects, we do have certain areas blocked during active construction where we may be excavating and it's just simply unsafe for the public to be there. But during non-work hours, you will be able to get to the river. We have people always coming through the site, coming around the site. Our crews know, how to work with the public and help keep everyone safe. We do have temporary fencing where needed, the orange construction fencing that will help direct the public around areas where we don't want them coming in for their own safety, and signage for, potential hazards. And that is in many languages, which I'll talk more about in a moment. And to be a good neighbor to our rafting community, which have been, we've had tremendous support from the recreational community on the river since the beginning of these projects. So we don't do in-river work on the weekend or on holidays, which is usually Labor Day weekend that falls during our construction period. So many questions I've had recently are this haul route. What is going on with this? So the haul route would be a removal of material via dump truck of really fine sand and sediment that we don't need for the project that is excavated during construction. So that material would come out the project site. It would go out the Park Road, Tarshish Drive. The trucks would be making a left on Van Alstyne and a right on Fair Oaks Boulevard. And we know there are several directions to go, and we always want to be mindful when we have any kind of haul traffic going through, a neighborhood area, especially in a park. And this route was chosen because it helps to avoid, because our project is starting in mid-August, it's going to go into the fall. We want to avoid school traffic that we would encounter, that trucks might encounter if we were to go up in the Palm Drive direction. And by heading out Fair Oaks Boulevard, Van Alstyne to Fair Oaks, we can take advantage of a intersection where there's a traffic signal and avoid having trucks sitting there idling in the neighborhood waiting to make a left turn against traffic. So that is why that route was chosen. And from here, the material that is taken out of the parkway will be beneficially reused for other projects. We're actually, because we have a great partnership with regional parks, I've worked with their maintenance staff, and they've identified 5 areas on the parkway where we will be taking material at our cost to stockpile areas so that they may use it for future trail work or whatever maintenance needs they have. And the remainder of the material will be going out to Natomas to be used. It will be stockpiled at a core and Safeka project stockpile site for future use on parkway projects. As Jessica mentioned earlier, you can't do a project like this without a team. And we have a lot of ongoing coordination with various entities on the parkway, including the Nature Center, the golf course. What we want to do is work with everyone. We want to make sure that we are not impacting their operations any more than absolutely necessary, and to work with them. So same as we did in 2021 when we worked with the Nature Center, we spoke with their staff, and we have a good understanding of when their public and school programs occur, and we can observe a quiet time when we need to. If they really need silence in the park and surrounding area, we can work with that. Working with the golf course staff, they've been tremendously supportive of the project, and they asked how they can help. I said, we'll do most of the work, but we really appreciate it. They've been a great partner on all the projects so far, and they previously hosted an open house on past projects for us. And for those of you familiar with the project site, that gravel bar has a white tower on it, and that's actually a Carmichael Water District intake that is not in use right now, except by a lot of birds who really enjoy spending time there. So we also, since they are a water forum member, it was an opportunity to reach out to Carmichael Water District's general manager and their engineer. They had a chance to review our drawings, where we plan to excavate, and we're making sure that we're keeping them in the loop to understand if they have any concerns and what to do, so that we don't affect their facility that's sitting there. We have regular coordination with the park's various department leadership and director, and these projects are vetted through the regional parks, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the RPAC approval process. As I mentioned, we do reach out directly to our rafting vendors and the fishing community. We provide information. Many of them are kind enough to pass on information to their various listservs and Facebook groups. And many of you on this call probably received a direct mail to your address because you are in the vicinity of the project where you may hear noise. You may be a frequent user of the parkway because you have a nearby address, or could be along the haul route, as short as it is. And the many months leading up to the project and during, I have the opportunity to go to various neighborhood association meetings and brief various stakeholder groups such as Supervisor Desmond's staff. A shout out to Carmichael Creek and Carmichael Colony, who were kind enough to have water forum staff at their recent meetings to share information about the project and to get really good feedback from them. So those will continue as we move farther in the project. And once we get closer, August 14th will be here before we know it. So in just a couple of weeks, you will see signage go up in the project vicinity and upstream and downstream, informing people of the project, giving them information about the project and why we're doing it. And also safety signage will go up, on the fencing and trails that lead down into the project area. That signage is in 6 languages because we want to be very mindful of who's using different areas of the parkway. So we have English, Spanish, Hmong, Russian, Farsi, and Ukrainian, because we've had some really good feedback from our neighborhood groups and stakeholders to make sure that we're able to reach out with project information to all of the user groups that frequent this area. We do have our project website up and running. Please go visit it. There's a lot of project information there. And there's also a link to sign up for construction tours. These are open to everyone. And I think, other than seeing the fish come in and use our projects almost immediately after we're finished, the construction tours are definitely my favorite part of the job. It's a great opportunity to get really diverse groups on site together. I always learn so much from our stakeholders and the questions that they ask and the information that they offer. So I encourage everyone on the webinar and share with others to sign up for a tour. They're really fun. They're usually on Friday mornings before it gets too hot. And we have, those are open to everyone, but we have specifically reached out to our local resident groups to make sure that, we're able to get all of them out on site because they are the most impacted by the project, but thus far have been very supportive, and we really appreciate that and look forward to seeing you all out there. As we get into construction, we are almost always on the news. We reach out to the news media and social media to help inform the public and the region and educate folks on what is going on in the river, why they might be seeing bulldozers and other large equipment so that they aren't alarmed. And it also helps to highlight, the place that our salmonids have. We are, one of the few major cities that has a salmon run coming through it. So, the parkway is a jewel and the river is really, the crown in that, and having the fishery there. We really enjoy educating the public on that aspect of the parkway. And once we're in the nitty-gritty of construction, I provide a look ahead to our regional parks and agency leadership every week, what to expect. And a little bit as we start to get toward the end of the webinar, there's a lot of oversight and approvals that need to happen so that projects like this can occur. And as a partner with Regional Parks, Water Forum did participate in their natural resource management planning process. And we do go through to make sure that we're consistent with the Parkway Plan and the Natural Resource Management Plan before we implement these projects. And this is all part of what we take into account. And our projects were actually included in the analysis that occurred when regional parks prepared their own plan. And you may wonder why we're doing this work during the busy recreation season. Part of that, we have quite a compressed construction schedule. That's part of why the crews work long days. And there's a lot of work that needs to occur in a short time period because we are restricted when we can work in the river, not only by the flood season and those regulations, but also the Endangered Species Act. We do have our Chinook are a species of concern, and we do have a threatened steelhead population on this river. So we are bound by the ESA to complete our work in just a short 4-month period. And we know that, that pushes the work into the late summer and early fall. We want to do the work when the flows are as low as possible. And we do work with reclamation to understand what their flow forecasts are so that we can time the work to be most effective and work around, when we may have higher flows earlier in the summer when they are making deliveries down the river. And I do not need to get into a list of all of the permits that we get, but I do like to highlight this, that there is even though this is a restoration and enhancement work, there's a tremendous amount of oversight that occurs on these projects by many state, federal, and local agencies that evaluate the work that we're proposing to do for, all aspects, all resources. They make sure that we aren't going to impact cultural or tribal resources. Although we are restoring one habitat, we do have to make sure that we don't harm another. So we have our biological resource agencies that oversee the project. We also have oversight from other agencies such as the Corps and the Central Lake Flood Board, who look at the project from a public safety and flood and erosion perspective. So there's a lot that goes into this, and all of these permits are on the Water Forum's website, and happy to answer any questions about them. And last but not least, we strive to not just build projects and walk away. This is a long-term investment of Water Forum's time and efforts of our funding agencies and supporters on the river. As I mentioned, we have been working on the river since 2008. And since 2008, we have been conducting a tremendous amount of science and monitoring. We have crews on the river that assess how effective our habitat is. You see some of the crews here are actually snorkeling, and they do that so that they can count how many juvenile fish they see. So we're out counting and measuring how many juvenile fish are using our sites. We count the reds to understand how many fish are using our sites for their spawning activity. We're able, fortunate to connect genetic studies on the river and such things as using otoliths. That's our fish ear bone. It is similar to tree rings. We can extract those ear bones from fish that have spawned and died on their own. And we can understand the fish population, how long they stay in the river, how long they stay in the ocean, what they're eating, and really it adds to the broader understanding of the fishery on the Lower American. We also get to, conduct special studies and water quality monitoring so that we understand, corridor health and river health beyond just the fishery. And we do a tremendous amount of physical monitoring and measurement, where we're looking at how the bed and the banks of the river change based on our projects, based on when we have floods, because this is a dynamic river and we want to make sure that we are adaptively managing and designing our projects and updating them as needed based on the best available science. And we share the information that we collect with other agencies and collaborate with them where possible. With that, I think we can go to questions.
Thanks, Erica. I hope you all enjoyed Erica's presentation. She really knows the details of these projects from what's happening on the ground all the way up to what's happening in terms of state agencies and permits, and just really the entire process. And so hopefully you've learned something tonight. I always learn something when we go through this, even though we do this every day. There are some great questions that you've added into the chat. So we've got a few more minutes left. Maybe we can take a few questions. I just want to remind everyone that we will have extensive information about the project available online on our website. And I believe that was put in the chat. So you can always go online to find out about the projects. We also post often on social media, including LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, and Twitter. Sorry, not Facebook, but Twitter. And so you can track the projects. During project construction, we often will post photos and updates, and that's always a way to communicate with us. But also you can contact us at this email address, contact@waterforum.org, and you'll get a response from us, likely within, we aim for 24 hours, and it'll be probably from America. So you're meeting the folks that are working behind the scenes on the projects. Another thing that I just want to highlight, because there were a lot of questions about communications, is just that, this year we are offering special construction tours for local residents. It'll likely be in late September, early October timeframe, but you'll be able to come and check out the site and see what's happening, see the action. And these are just really incredible projects when you come out and see them. There's big bulldozers, and it's a construction site for sure, with some really incredible benefits. So go ahead and email us. You'll email Christine Kahn, Christine at npronline.com, and that's in the chat as well. And we really do hope to meet you. This is part of what we really enjoy about the projects, is that we get to not just improve the river and help things out, but we really meet a lot of the community in the neighborhood. So please do reach out. So just a few questions. So there was a question from Stephanie about what, if anything, can my Girl Scout troop do to help out? Stephanie, I love that. Thank you for thinking of it. So one, sign up for a tour. We'd love to have a troop of Girl Scouts come out and talk about the project. And then, in terms of messages, this webinar will be recorded. So you're happy to, feel free to go ahead and pass this around. In terms of messages, during the project, go ahead and share the message of what we're doing and why we're doing it and why it's important. And then please go ahead and contact us if you'd like any additional information. We usually have educational materials, including frequently asked questions, that are on our website. We're happy to provide those as well. And then usually we will be at 1 or 2 educational events throughout the year. Effie Yeaw Nature Center usually has a nature fest in the fall, and we're often there at that festival, and then probably 1 or 2 throughout the year as well. So you can come find us, and we're always happy to work with local groups. Let's see. So there's a lot of questions. There's one really good question from Kent. Kent asked, and Erica, this one's for you. At 50,000 CFS, or cubic feet per second, can the wood introduced in the side channels get moved into the main channel by high water?
That is a great question. And due to so when we're looking at designing the projects, they are over-designed. The factor of safety on our wood design is very high because we do not want it to move. And I'm happy to share our design drawings with you if you're curious, but we would not expect our wood to move at 50,000. It is over in the side channel area. It is keyed into the bank and has a lot of overbank and anchor timber. So that it is not just a tree shoved into the bank. We have actually large anchor timber that are almost 30 feet long, like telephone poles that we use to anchor the wood. So it is over designed, and we would not expect it to wash out into the main channel. Illustrating that, we had actually wood at our Ancil Hoffman project, the 2021 site, which is not over it is in a side channel. It's in the alcove, and at that site, actually the water does come up over the entire gravel bar, starting about 30,000, and we got to about 35,000 this year, and we didn't see anything. It didn't move at all. So it tells us that once we get even higher flows, we should be good to go on our wood.
Okay, great question from Casey. How is the water forum and its supporting agencies implementing and maintaining enforcement of these habitat restoration projects in light of all the human activities that are going on? Everything from, pollution, all the scope of human activities. Erica, you want to try that?
So I would say the water forum does not have an enforcement role on the parkway. So we do operate somewhat on goodwill. We do come in and implement our habitat. We do post signage to help educate the public and work with our parkway partners. I know Effie Yeaw Nature Center posts a lot of signage around the project site during the spawning period. So we do try to educate people so that they understand what the habitat, really what purpose it's supposed to serve and how they may protect the habitat that's there by not throwing rocks, maybe not wading close to the shore during certain times of the year. As far as an enforcement piece, that, as I mentioned, that's not a role that we have on the parkway, but we do hope that the habitat is not tampered with. We do periodically have in side channel areas, our two-legged species may use rocks to build a little bridge to get across or place things there. And we work with regional parks if there's ever any kind of channel obstruction or a little bridge or anything like that that's built, to make sure that it's removed in a safe manner in compliance with how they would take care of it as a maintenance issue. So I hope that answers your question. Definitely reach out if you have additional.
Okay, we've got 1 minute left, but there's such good questions. There's still a few more, but Erica, just 2 questions related to safety. So will the area be blocked off to the public? And then do we have safeguards in place to prevent brush fires caused by the diesel trucks or any of the construction activity?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so the second one first, all of the material that's used on the site, the crews are experienced working in California in our dry environment during the summer, so they know what to look for. All the construction equipment does have spark arresters, so we have actually never had an issue with the vegetation, catching fire or anything like that on site. We have BMPs in place so that any area where we are conducting any, equipment maintenance or refueling is protected in case of a spill. The crews know exactly what to do about that to protect the environment. And what was the first part of the question?
Public access.
Public access. Right. So in general, you will have access to the river where it is safe. So if it's an area of active excavation or the equipment is right there, we will have that blocked off, and crews would ask, members of the public to take an alternate route to get to the river, just so that we keep you safe. We've never had an accident with any of these projects before, and we hope to continue that and not have one in 2023. So the crews would direct you to a better spot to go in that moment. And then, during off hours, though, we have people walking through the site and accessing the river.
Okay. So we're at 7 o'clock. We do have a few more questions, but we don't want to keep you too much longer. I just wanted to say that there's some questions about sort of interaction with wildlife. So interaction with predators. Are these projects making it, Eric, thank you, good question. We've noticed more coyotes and raptors at Ancil Hoffman near the river. Are you concerned that concentrating efforts at Ancil Hoffman might make it easier for predators? I'm just going to say that's a really interesting question. We don't track data related to the predators. Erica, I don't know if you know more about sort of, local wildlife surveys, but that's not something that we connect with, but that's certainly a really, really interesting observation for us. And then the other question, Carly, thank you. With all the efforts to increase fish populations, is there going to be a partnership with Fish and Game, now Fish and Wildlife, to protect the population from being depleted by overfishing in the area? Another really great question. The decision about overfishing and whether or not to close fisheries that decision is made independent of all of these projects and takes into account a lot of factors, including ocean conditions. But we do work closely with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to do monitoring specific to these projects. So we are really looking at fish populations and the impact of these projects. and that information gets reported out on an annual basis. Some of you know that the salmon fishery was closed this year due to poor conditions. And again, that was a decision that was made just based on the system as a whole, not just the lower American River, but also taking into account some ocean conditions as well. These are really great questions. And then a good personal question, can we volunteer for upcoming projects? You had me at willow planting. The willow planting was an amazing volunteer effort. We planted 700 willow cuttings. It was a whole morning. It was super fun. We had lunch. And yes, if we do it again, we will put out a call for volunteers. Last year, 2 years ago, we had coordinated with Effie Yeaw Nature Center. So we usually coordinate with a local organization to partner if we do big volunteer events. And the best way to stay informed about that is to sign up for our e-blast, our email distribution list, which you can do on our website, or just send us an email to contact@waterforum.org and let us know if you're interested in volunteering and helping out. Everything from Girl Scout troops to local residents. So let's end it here because it's a little after 7. I just want to thank all of you for participating. We hope to meet you in person out on the site. Please do come over and say hi. We know that the projects are often on your morning walking route or your afternoon walking route, and we really do enjoy meeting you. So once again, thanks so much. Stay in touch. Check out our website for more info, and we'll see you out there. Thanks.